remember in the a few earlier examples where we learned where we use constructor and we use props inside it, and I said I'll be explaining about it a little later. So here we go. So we'll just finish that and then go ahead and do a little bit about state, and then we can do our project, our first project. But now, so if your component has a constructor function, you should always pass the props into the constructor function, and also you have to pass it to the react.component via super. So go ahead and let's remove all of it, and let's give another example to it. Let's remove that, and let's start off with class books again. And I'm using the same examples so that you don't get confused. I can use multiple examples, but it's easier for you to understand if we keep using the same thing. So it'll become a practice. Let's give it a constructor function. Sorry about that. So as I said earlier, it is compulsory to pass props. If you want to use props, you have to pass it to the constructor function as an argument, and then to pass it to the react.component class, we'll have to pass it through props, through super. And after this, let's put a semicolon here. And right after this, let's give it a render. And in the render function, let us return a JSX where the author of all these books are. So you know what to do. So this dot props dot author, and where will this author value be coming from? This data. We'll have to pass it as an argument in the component where we call the component. So go ahead, and here we'll have to change it to books, and in books we give the author value as j.k.rowling. For some reason, none of this have lightened up. It has to lighten up when it's using books, but it's not. It's showing me some kind of an error. My text editor is showing me some kind of an error. Okay. Okay, so this keyword is extends and not extend. Just a small mistake, and that would have caused a very big problem. But anyways, so this is about it. When we can use constructor. So what's happening here is I am passing the author value, the author property or the argument into books via constructor, that is props. So as soon as the component is called, the constructor is initialized, and when the constructor is initialized, this value is put inside props, and super props will be going to react.component, and this props will be for the books class, the books component, and here it will be going via super, and then we can access it using this .props.author. That is, this value can be accessed here using props inside of constructor. So go ahead and save this. Once you've saved it, you can go and check here. The value has come. The author of these books are J.K. Rowling. But you might observe that even if you remove this, it will still work. But let's say I want to use this dot state inside the constructor. We'll have to use props to get the value from the books or any other component. From another component, we'll have to use props through the constructor, and we can use this dot state. So this is just a skeleton and not an actual example, but further on we'll look into how that will actually work. So now let us talk about state. Now state and react props are read only. You will get an error if you change their value. You cannot change their value directly. You'll have to make a change in a different way, but for a prop, it's only read only. So basically state React component has a built-in state object. So state is, as I told earlier, state is an object. Now the state object is where you store property values that belongs to the component. We did that earlier. Now when the state object changes, the component re-renders. So as I said earlier, state object itself cannot be changed. We need to change it in a different way. So when we do that, the entire state object changes, the component re-renders. So let's create a state object. The state object is initialized inside the constructor. Now let's go ahead and let's just continue with this itself, but we might have to make some changes in the render. So you can go ahead, and the state object is always inside the constructor function. So please remember that. So this dot state is equal to, so state has, obviously it's an object. Let's give some values to it. So let's give book. Let's say Harry Potter. Alright, so we have given some value. Now let's close this and let's put a semicolon right here. And in the render function, let's not return this. Let's change. Let's put a brackets and say div. And inside of this, let's give it a h1 tag and say this is my book. And how do we access it? So we can access it via this dot state dot book. As simple as that. So what just happened here? This is referring to the object, and state is this dot state is the object which of the component. Inside the component, there's this dot state is the object. We're accessing the booked element inside of state, the data. We're accessing the book data and we're bringing it right down here. Let's go ahead and save this. For saving it, let's just put a semicolon here. It's good to follow the syntax, but it's not very much necessary. It's still going to render. This is my book, Harry Potter. Let's go and put some more values inside of the object. So as soon as Harry Potter gets over, right after this, let's put a comma for the next value. And that is going to be, you can say author is J.K. Rowling. Comma. We can also put a page number. Page is, let's say, around 200. You can put double or single quotes. And the year of release will be 1997. That was when the book Harry Potter was released. So we have given values to the object. Let's go ahead and save this. We haven't used it, so there's no error. It's still the same value. We've just put more data into our object. Let's go ahead and use these values inside, use these data inside our render. So this is my book, and we can say, and its details are, let's give it a p tag, and inside the p tag, let's just give it its value. So author is this dot state dot author, and as soon as this is over, let's give it a number of pages. You can put a comma here. This dot state dot pg, that is a value, so pg goes right here. and the year, that is this dot state dot. It's as simple as that. You can go ahead and save it, and you can see all the paragraph and the H1 tag right here. This is my book Harry Potter, and its details are: author is J.K. Rowling, number of pages is 200, and year is 1997. So it was as simple as that. And you can put more objects if you want to. If you can just play around with it, and you can access these values right here. So you can see how all of these are sequels. So once you have used this, the what you learned earlier, how to use constructor and the props inside of constructor, you learned how to put the state inside of constructor function, and this is compulsory that the state has to be inside of the constructor function. Then we can render those values. So all this is very important, and the constructor earlier where I said it's just a skeleton and it's not useful. Of course, it is very useful right now, because if you remove this, you will get an error because this dot state cannot be used anywhere else. So as soon as the component is called, the book component is called, the constructor function is initialized, and then all this is called and rendered. So that's the flow of how it works. Now let's change the state object in render method. To change a value, as in now you want to change some value, or like let's say you want to change the book and you want to change the year it was released. Now you can't do that directly here. As I said earlier, that would give you an error. So if you change something here, the original value is completely lost. It's gone forever. So you can't change it here. We'll have to change it somewhere else. So to change a value in state object, use the this dot set state method. So that's another method that's called this dot set state. So we'll change the value in this dot set state. Now when a value in the state object changes, so when a value in the state object changes, the component will re-render. So when this value is changed, the entire component gets re-rendered. Now the component will re-render, meaning that the output will change according to the new value. So whatever this dot set state function has given, the new value gets re-rendered, and the value in that component changes. Now I'll explain it with my example. So go ahead and right after the constructor function, go outside of constructor function. So this dot state, the object has to be inside of constructor function. But when you want to change its value, we will be using something called this dot set state. So to use that, we'll call a function. Now let's create a function first. Now let's say change book and arrow functions. Open the brackets, and here we will be using this dot set state method, where we will be changing some value, that is the book value we will be changing here. So when this function runs, this value is re-rendered and this value is changed. So this dot set state is equal to it's a method, so it takes an arguments and not some, it's not a variable, it's a method, so it takes variables, and we can say book and book, or we can put an object as an argument. So the book, so the casual vacancy. This is another book written by J.K. Rowling. So we can just change the book, not the author. And to run this function, we'll have to do something here. So when we, let's say we'll put a button there. So when we click that button, this function is fired. Alright. So when this function is fired, this dot set state method is run. And when this runs, the value of book here will change, and that gets re-rendered. So right after the p tag, let's put a button. So that is here. Let's put a button after this. Once this is over, next one, we'll put a button. So how do I put a button? It's very simple, and it's just button. There is nothing different here, like how we have to use class name. There's nothing as such. The button has not changed. Button is still the same. What is the type? Type is a button. This is the basic HTML. And now on click. So what is this? This is an event handler. So we're putting an attribute. And on click has to be in camel case. On click is equal to. So on click means, so when I click it, something has to happen. So on click, I want this function to run. Now I can't just say change book. I need to say where. So it is this, the component. The component's function is being accessed. So what am I supposed to do? I'm going to say this. So inside of brackets, I'm going to say this dot, which the method I'm accessing, let's change, it should come here, but it hasn't for some reason. But anyways, the method is change book. So that's the method we're using. That's the function that is going to get fired as soon as we click. Now after this, let's just close the button. What is that? That's changing the book. To change book. That is what will be displayed in our button. Go ahead and save this. And you can see the button right here. It says change book. So once I click this, the method, the function has to run. And inside the function, we have put this dot set state method, which takes the argument, the object that changes the book value to from Harry Potter to the casual vacancy. It has to change. So once we click it, this is my book, the casual vacancy, and its details are. Let's put it in a quotes to make it better. Okay, so do that. Save it now. Alright, that's better. So this is my book Harry Potter and its details are, and when we click this, it fires that function where that method takes place and it changes it to this is my book, the casual vacancy, and its details are. So slowly we are getting very dynamic. Our web app is slowly getting dynamic. We're learning how to make it dynamic. Now I have a small exercise for you. What I want you to do is, I want you to go ahead and change the once I click, so change book and year. The year value has to change. That is, this value has to change. So you can do that here, right here, and you can pause this video and I will wait for some time and I'll do it and show it to you, but try to do it yourself so that helps. So go ahead and do it. Okay, I hope you did it. So I want to change the book and year. First, let's save it. In our button we see change book and year, but only the book value is changing. I want the year to change. Now for year to change, what am I supposed to do? I need to go here, comma. It's just taking objects as arguments, so it's not that hard. You can just put the value here and say year is 2012. Now we can save it. It has been re-rendered, so only the component gets re-rendered just when we click this. You can see this is my book, The Casual Vacancy, and its details are J.K. Rowling, number of pages 200, and year is 2012. Now let's make it clear so that we can see it much easily. Let's change the p tag to this here, and year can be in a h1 tag, so we can see it changing here. Now let's go ahead and save this, and you can observe how this value here and Harry Potter and year changes. Once I click this, it changed it to the casual vacancy and 2012. So that's about the basics of state, and there's a lot more where we can change a lot more things and make it more dynamic. So we'll see in the next few videos how we can improve our coding skills.